Record. Okay, so we are doing an impromptu episode. We are launching straight in. I've stolen some time from Phil's day to quickly give us a rundown of Leviticus because we are about to, so anyone tuning into this, Her Theology, a bunch of listeners and we read through the Bible every single year chronologically. Well, we've done the last year chronologically. We're doing it this year chronologically as well. And anyone can join at any time. So if you're listening to this and you're like, I want to do that, just message me on Instagram or email me hertheology@gmail.com and I will send you the link and you can join us at any time. You don't have to start from the beginning. Just hop on where we are. Anyway, our reading plan, our group has found ourselves at the end of Exodus and tomorrow we start Leviticus. And I thought, I should get Phil Bray quickly to give us a heads up because this is a tricky book to read and people can kind of get bogged down and then they just go, this is boring, and they tune out and they just lose a lot of gold that's in this book. So Phil, I want you to tell us how are we meant to read this book? So I don't know how to, this is a very impromptu session. So tell me, like, we are about to read Leviticus. What are some of the most important things that we should think about and consider before we start reading?
Yep. Good question. So it's, so much to talk about. So there's only two narrative sections in Leviticus. The rest of it is kind of priestly instructions or wisdom for the priests. There's two stories, which I'll talk about in a bit. But for the most of it, it's not story. So up until now, Genesis, Exodus, you'll have been reading narrative, like pretty much the whole thing, apart from the genealogies, narrative, and exciting narrative. But you get to Leviticus and it all slows right down. And that's actually really important because in Exodus, they've been wandering in the wilderness, and in Numbers, they'll be wandering in the wilderness. But in Leviticus, they stop wandering. The time slows right down and time stops. And their wandering slows right down so that they're camped in the one spot at Mount Sinai for the whole book. But it's important because they're not wandering. It's the place where God appears to them. So far in the story, people have had an interesting relationship with God, and they haven't really been able to get it right. Nope. But you would have just read in Exodus that God's made a covenant, and Leviticus is basically what that looks like. And that's kind of why I love it so much, because Leviticus shows you what it looks like to be in a covenant relationship with your God and what it looks like to have him live in the midst of his people. And that's so cool. Like, it's often we think that it's like there's a chasm between us and God and we've got to try and get to God, but there's stuff in our way. But in Exodus and Leviticus, it's actually God is the one who wants to come and live in the midst of his people. And Leviticus is the book that shows how that's going to happen.
And yeah, that was something for me reading it this time. I'm going, it's all about God coming to us, which is wild because we don't deserve it, but yet he pursues that relationship. Even when you read in Exodus constantly, they're ungrateful, they're selfish, they're rebellious, they're idolaters. It is amazing to see that unraveling as I'm reading it again. It's cool.
Yep. I might say this again at the end, but some things to look out for as you're reading is direction is a big one. So what direction do the offerings go into? What direction does the priest walk, or where does the priests go? Where do holy things go? Where does the smoke go? Where does the scapegoat go? Because that'll be a jarring change if you've been following the direction and the language of everything going in towards God's holy presence. You turn to the scapegoat and it goes the other way. And everything, all the language surrounding the scapegoat is that it's unclean. So that's super interesting. Look out for that. There's a lot of meals, a lot of eating. So take note of, it's actually surprising And even I didn't realize how much food language there was until I started writing a book about Leviticus from a butcher's perspective. And then I'm like, oh, there's like a lot of instructions about how to cook food and who eats it and where they eat it and how clean they have to be to eat it. So look out for that. Um, the things that can be in God's presence and the things that cannot be in God's presence. So things like death and disease, and then blood, and which, well, blood is life, but blood can be in God's presence, but death and disease cannot. Yeah, so there's some things to look out for. Hopefully they sound exciting. I find them exciting.
And what would be, you said before as well, this is where time slows right down.
Yep.
How long is this book in a duration of time historically?
Um, Good question. So there's a bit of overlap. I don't know, but
Mhm.
so you would have just read Exodus 29, where Aaron and his sons are consecrated.
Mhm.
They're consecrated as priests. The tabernacle's finished, it gets consecrated. Aaron and his sons are consecrated. And that's kind of the setup for Leviticus. So everything is prepared. Like they're in the wilderness, they've been rescued from slavery. God has brought them out. They've got like a little taste of what it looks like with the blood on the doorframe and the lamb, Passover lamb that they ate as a meal. But as yet, they've been on the run. But
Yeah.
Leviticus is where they build the tabernacle and then it stops. And then you read about what it's going to look like to be able to go in to the tabernacle. So we'll talk about the structure, the chiasm structure in a bit. But actually, no, let's talk about it now.
Right.
So, yep, you would have read Exodus 29, the consecration of Aaron and his sons. But a chiasm means that the bit in the middle is the central focus. So if you think about a picture frame, the frame on the outside draws your attention to what's in the middle.
Yep.
So Exodus and Numbers are kind of parallels. So you'll see that in Numbers, when you get there, they visit all the same places that they did in Exodus. And the same things happen, like they get water from a rock, they have food from the sky, they complain, and they complain the same number of times. They visit some of the same places, they camp in the same spots. Like it's intentionally designed to show you that what happens in Exodus and Numbers is kind of around Leviticus, and then Leviticus is supposed to be like drawing your focus to what's in the middle.
Got you.
Yeah. So in the middle of Leviticus is the Day of Atonement. I'll talk about that in a sec. But so, like I said before, you start Leviticus as they're waiting to go into the tabernacle. It's all been consecrated, but no one's gone in yet. And it's actually not until you get to chapter 9 that anyone goes in and meets God.
Mm.
So you've gone through like chapters 1 through 8, and you've read about all these sacrifices, about how to draw near to God, but no one's done it. So chapter 9, chapter 9, 8 and 9 is basically a retelling of Exodus 29. Like it'll sound like you've read it all before
Okay.
because you have. But Leviticus is where all the action happens. So what happens is you read about all the offerings. So the burnt offering, the grain offering, the peace offering, the sin offering, and the guilt offering. And that's chapters 1 through 6 of Leviticus. And then chapters 6 through 7, you read about all those offerings again, but from the priest's perspective.
Right.
And then you read chapter 8, which is the consecration of Aaron and his sons. And
Hmm.
what they do is they do all those offerings. So I think it's intentionally written that way because what we're hoping for is for humans to be able to draw near to God. And the word offering actually means draw near, like a sacrifice or an offering is basically a nearness gift. So they're bringing a gift close to Yahweh so that they can draw near and enter his presence and visit him and have a meal with him mostly. Um, so yeah, chapters 8 and 9, it tells the story about how Aaron and Moses and Aaron's sons offer a burnt offering, a grain offering, and a peace offering and a sin offering. And it's like it's been building up to this moment where all of those sacrifices that are described were just in preparation for this event. And then finally, Aaron and Moses walk into the tabernacle because they've done all the things that were just described. And then God's glory appears to all the people, and they yell out and they worship and bow down, and basically like that's the climax. But then you turn the page to chapter 10, and then Nadab and Abihu, they mess it up straight away. So they
Yes,
grab,
sons.
yep,
Yes, yes.
yep. So this is one of the two narratives in Leviticus. So we've just had the consecration of everything, and what you've been reading in Exodus as well. And then Nadab and Abihu, they take something unholy and they try and draw near to God, and fire comes out and consumes them and they die. Yep. And you're like, guys, what are you
So
doing?
close.
Yep. And then so actually the middle of Leviticus, which is the Day of Atonement, is written as a direct response to that event. So I think verse 1 of chapter 16 says, after the death of Nadab and Abihu, Yahweh gave these instructions about Day of Atonement. So as you're reading it, you should be thinking about what did they do that made it necessary for the Day of Atonement to cleanse the space. So their dead bodies, like contaminated holy space. So yeah, Day of Atonement is like an annual cleanup to cleanse holy space, to make atonement for the people so that they're clean, to kind of keep everything clean and pure for when priests do dumb things, or when humans generally do dumb things.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah.
So it sounds a lot like this book is trying to get us to realize how holy God is. Is that fair? Or is it more like there's obviously more to it, but I can't help but think I'm just constantly thinking I have lost sight of how holy God is.
Yeah. Yes, you're right. Because we don't live it, or we don't experience the restrictions and the boundaries that Israel would have, because we have a high priest forever now. But yeah, they would have known that God was a holy God in ways that we don't. But I think one thing I've learned is that it's important to acknowledge and appreciate God's holiness, and that you can't just waltz in like Nadab and Abihu. But I think that it's all bound up in covenant, which you would have just read about. And we are in a covenant relationship with God now. And so we can actually draw near with confidence, Hebrews says. But I think, and yeah, this is one of the things that has shifted in my brain, that while it was a restriction for Israel, like reasons that they couldn't draw near, and that's what you'll read in Leviticus, I found it helpful to imagine all the things that people do and what it looks like for priests and people and animals who do come into God's presence. Like that's us. So like they couldn't draw near if they were sick, or if they had a broken bone, or they couldn't be a priest if they had a broken bone, or if they had a limp. And we might think that that sounds harsh, but I think it's a picture of what it looks like to be with God in his presence, and what it looks like to have God living amongst humanity. So for them, it was a restriction, like you can't be a priest with a broken leg. But for us, it's we have been invited into God's presence. So it means that there will be no disease and there will be no flaws.
Mm.
Yeah, does that make sense?
Yes, because of Jesus.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. And so where do we see Jesus in Leviticus? So as we're reading it, should we be looking like thinking biblical theology, which is how all of scripture points us to Jesus? Where do we see Jesus in Leviticus? What should we be looking out for?
Yep. So I've been reading Hebrews at the moment.
Yep.
And Hebrews talks about the shadows. So I like to think of Leviticus as the shadow and Jesus as the reality.
Mm.
And it's not that he does the reality, but he is the reality. So what you'll read about in Leviticus of an offering, it's an image that's pointing to the reality. And in one sense, it's pointing to what Jesus does, but more than that, it's pointing to him, the reality. It's pointing to Jesus as the person. So where an animal was unblemished or blameless, and it entered into God's presence, and it was a pleasing aroma to God, Jesus is the person who enters into God's presence on our behalf and is a pleasing aroma to God.
Mm.
And his whole life was a pleasing aroma. And where the priests, they're the same, described the same way as an animal offering. They had to be blameless. They worked in close to God's presence, and they're described as acceptable. And so Jesus is that for us. He's the ultimate priest, the high priest, that
Mm.
we're invited to participate in that. So, yeah, I'd be noticing and thinking about, what it looks like for offerings and priests to draw near and to live in God's presence. And I think, the main thing I think is that they're shadows, and it's like a low resolution way of a low res picture of the reality that's coming, that the reality that we now have a relationship with or a new covenant with.
That's good. And so to wrap us up, I guess, what would you, I mean, obviously add whatever you want to add as well, but how would you help us readers of Leviticus navigate the tricky passages that are going to come up?
Mm.
Because there are some passages in this book that we're going to read and go, I don't like that. That doesn't seem fair.
Yep. Yep. Yes. Struggle with them because I struggle with them. There's passages that sound icky and probably would rather them not be there. So I'm not at all saying that that I've got an answer or that you should be able to understand them all.
Mm.
But actually, so I was talking before about Carmen Imes. She's a Exodus scholar, and she said something really helpful about the laws. About I think it was one of the laws about stoning someone who's done something, and it just sounds wrong.
Mm.
But she said that often laws like that are given, they describe like an extreme example. So maybe not a real example, and maybe not a law that must be carried out, but like it's more like an imaginary scenario. Like imagine this extreme example. In this extreme example, this is what you might want to use as wisdom or guidance when you're deciding and going about your
Mm.
everyday kind of rulings. So
Okay.
you actually never read about people carrying out those real harsh stonings.
Mm.
You might, I'll take that back. You might, but I can't remember any places where they actually did it. And in fact, when you get to Jesus and they bring the woman before him and say, and they're about to stone her, Jesus is like, no, like if
Don't.
you're without sin, then you can cast the first stone. But he's like, no, that's not the
Mm.
point of the law. So it's, I think they're given that it's not a law like we have today. It's not like you do this, you get the consequences. It's more like here's some guidelines and wisdom around for the judge or the ruler of the time. Um, this is an example of an extreme case, and take that wisdom and then apply it to what's happening in front of you. So maybe if
Right.
someone's doing something willfully wrong and not repenting, you'd be like, this is the ultimate extreme thing that I could do to you, but just leave our city and never come back. Um, I get the feeling that that's what's going on.
So,
But yeah,
okay, that's interesting because I think of the passages where it's like, you shall, then, remove them or kill them or whatever. So,
yeah.
so it's not, is it because it's translated differently, or is it because it's just a understanding of the times versus now where we, yeah,
So in other cultures, these kinds of laws would be written on a pillar and put in the middle of the city. And it's designed that someone visiting the city would be like, oh, this ruler's like so wise, and his city must be free of crime, and he would have like no adulterers, and everyone would treat their sons and daughters well, and everyone would honor their mother and father
a picture
because
of the
look,
perfect society, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But we know that the societies that have the pillar, like they were disastrous, like they were
Mm-hmm.
evil. But still,
And with
they
Israel.
thought that, yeah, this is what we want our culture and society to look like.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more like more a representation of the ruler, of the king. So
I
he's like,
see.
this is
Yeah.
what life looks like in my town or my province.
This is what
Um,
real justice looks like. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But it's up to the human judge or the human ruler whether they're going to do that or not. And it seems like Jesus is saying, well, you know, compassion and grace is actually what I'm all about.
Mm,
So,
that's good.
yeah.
I hadn't thought about it that way. Yeah, that's new to me as well. Going to chew on that. That's good. So, did you want to add anything else before we wrap this up?
Um, maybe one thing. So I'll send through what the
Yes.
chiasm of Leviticus looks like. So at the beginning, you've got the sacrificial rituals and then the priestly rituals. Um, and then you've got purification laws about how you can and can't be in God's presence. And then after the Day of Atonement, which is the one in the middle that cleans everything out, it kind of reverses. You've got the purification rituals, and then you've got some more priestly laws, and then some food laws. But in there, you've got the year of Jubilee, which is one of my favorite things to dwell on. So Jubilee is the year of release, where
I wish we
all,
still had it.
yeah, the Catholic Church does. They do it every 25 years.
Oh, today. How
Um,
good would it be if I could be mortgage free in 7 years?
yeah, but they don't cancel all debts.
Yeah.
I can't remember what they do
Isn't that
cancel, but
convenient?
yeah. Um, so every 50 years they would release all slaves. All land would go back to its original owners. All debt would be cancelled. And if you're in debt, basically you were a slave. If you couldn't pay off your money, you went to work for whoever you owed money to. So that's where we get the language of even forgive us our debts is coming from that kind of language in the Lord's Prayer.
Mm.
It's like we are a slave to something because we're unable to rescue ourselves out of being in debt to sin or evil or the devil. We need rescuing from that, but we can't do it. So we need someone else to rescue us. But so when Jesus turns up in Luke and reads from Isaiah, he says the year of Jubilee or the year of release. And he says, this is fulfilled in your presence. So he's talking about the year of Jubilee and he's saying, I am it. I am the release. I'm
Yeah,
going to
wow.
release you from debt. I'm going to release you from slavery. I'm going to release you from your sins. And that word release is the word forgiveness. It's the same word.
Mm.
So when he goes about forgiving sins and healing people, making them walk, releasing demons from people, he's doing a jubilee, like a cosmic jubilee.
That's cool.
Yeah, it is cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't thought of that.
Yeah,
And that echoes into him being our rest as well when it comes to the Sabbath and all these sort of things, right? Like he's really
yeah,
fulfilling every aspect of it, which
yeah,
I probably didn't think of. I'm just thinking of we've been set free from the law. I haven't thought about all those little things.
yeah. So the rest would be the Eden rest or the promised land rest would be the idea of being on the mountain with God. And they've just
Mm,
gone up Mount Sinai and basically they're having a meal with God in his rest. Um, but it doesn't stay like that.
yeah.
Yeah,
No, no, it doesn't.
no,
Israel had a lot more tough than we did, to be fair. So.
yeah, yeah,
Well, this is really good. I'm hoping. So, Phil has written a book. Leviticus is fun. Oh, Leviticus on the butcher's block. Sorry. I'm
yeah,
thinking of your YouTube title, your YouTube username. Um, Leviticus on the butcher's block, which is a really helpful book to help you work through this. So, if you're listening to this, you can order this book on Kurong, on Reformers. You can everywhere, anywhere, any of your major Christian retailers. But you can also find Phil on YouTube, and he's got a lot of resources on there, like lots of short to the point videos that help you chew through the sticky questions or just general themes that you find throughout Leviticus. So I would recommend you go check out Leviticus is Fun on YouTube as well, as we're going through the book of Leviticus, if you've got other questions, because you might find there's answers on there. But definitely get Phil's book. I've been loving it and my husband's enjoying it. So it's a good read. Um, and I just cottoned on that it was your wife that designed the pictures. And I was like, oh, that's cool.
yep, yep,
There you
yep,
go. Creative pair you are. All right.
yep,
Well, you're going to share with me that graphic as well for Leviticus. Is that
yes,
right? So
yep,
I might put that on
yep,
my website for anyone that wants it. You can just head to hertheology.com and you'll be able to download that on the resources page. And then that way that's available. I hope, am I allowed to do that? Is it
yeah.
someone
I've
else?
I've rewritten it. Maybe just credit Carmen Imes, but yeah, you can do
Okay.
that.
I'll credit both
Yep,
of you just, and I'll cover
yep,
my bum that way.
yep, yep.
All right, awesome. But Phil, thank you for your time. Thank you so much for doing this. I'm hoping this is going to be really exciting for everyone reading Leviticus now.
Yeah, fun for the first time and exciting.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep,
Now we need to do one for like numbers because that one just is like pulling teeth for me. So,
yep, yep. There's glimmers. It's my yeah. It might be my next project. We'll see.
okay, all right. I will watch this space.
Yep, yep.
All right. Well, thanks for that, Phil. And thanks, everyone. Make sure you read Leviticus. Join us if you want to read us on that reading plan. And otherwise, enjoy this week's episode as well when it comes out. I hope you enjoyed this little bonus one. All right. Share it with your friends and family.